Hi, I'm Coy Jandreau, and welcome to DC High Volume Batman. In this monthly companion series, we sit down with the cast and crew and beyond for DC High Volume Batman. Where we last left off in the story, we had the paralleling moments between Harvey Dent and our, at this point, Captain Gordon, as well as the moment where Poison Ivy completely and absolutely corrupts Bruce Wayne because no man can resist Poison Ivy. Now today on this show, I am honored to welcome Captain Gordon himself, Jay Paulson, as well as the composer for DC High Volume Batman, the one and only Sam Ewing. But first, I want to bring out a man who has taught me more about Jim Gordon than I ever knew I didn't know. I'm learning all new things about characters I've loved my whole life. I want to bring out the one and only Jay Paulson. We're sitting down with Jay Paulson. You know him from Mad Men, from Rust Creek, from Catch-22. He is our Jim, not yet Commissioner Gordon. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, Coy.
I'm so excited to talk about this character. I was telling you before, this is one of the roles that immediately leapt out to me. It is so iconic. It is so big and robust, but it's also a character that is our eyeline. He's the human element in this increasingly larger than life series of characters. I have to know for you, what was your personal entry point into this world and into this character?
Well, my personal entry point was reading the books as a youth.
Amazing.
And I was a huge fan of them, and I loved them. Dark Knight was my Batman growing up in the book, you know, the graphic novels and the comics and stuff. That was my technical entry. Now, as far as this project, it came about pretty much the way a lot of these sort of do standard. My people or what have you sort of send over the appointment, and I recorded it. You know, sent in a tape, and the positive response. We went and met on a Zoom and did more of that, and yeah,
it's really special because it is a character that people know from the comics and know from all the media that's adapted it. But I feel like year one is kind of a Gordon story. Like, I've always seen him as the lead of this story, and it's such a powerful performance in there. You've brought something really unique because we don't get to see this Gordon often. Was there anything you wanted to bring to this version you felt like was unique to year one?
You know, one of the things that happened early on was a little bit of the Chicago accent.
Sure.
Because having him been from Chicago was important, seemed to some of the people involved. And I thought it also humanized him. It placed him sort of in a world outside of Gotham too. So I thought that was really cool. You know, again, you talk about his humanity and the fact that he is, you know, coming into this situation with his own a set of doubts and concerns and a pregnant wife. And so, you know, there's a lot going on for this guy as we find him in the start. But I was blown away myself with what a big part he was. I couldn't believe it when I started to actually look at the thing. I go, oh my gosh, like I'm in this thing a lot.
Yeah.
You know, you think about Batman, it's Batman's show, and then you're like, this is
year one's kind of mine. I think
I don't know about that, but I won't go that far. But you're absolutely
I'll do it for
right.
you. I got it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like I got a lot to say in this thing.
And it's so powerful because the POV is not just the human element, but arguably the readers seeing Batman manifest. Like, we get to experience you discovering this vigilante running around a city. And like you said, you've got so much going on in your own worldview. Has how you see Gordon changed after playing him since you were so familiar as a child?
Absolutely. I mean, seeing him now as an adult, as a grown-up, or whatever, however you want to put it, you do see him as a grown-up.
Yeah.
You know? Whereas as a youth, I saw him a lot more as an archetype.
Sure.
You know, the head of police, this associate of Batman's in some regard. Whereas, you know, coming to him now, you see him as a husband, a father, you know, a well-rounded human being with everything that goes along with that.
It's interesting as you know, anyone ages and these characters that have been around since before we were born, the adults become our peers.
Totally.
And you're uniquely poised to have now embodied one of those. Do you read the comics differently now, also having played him? Like, is it not just picking it up like, oh, this guy's my age or older, but it's also like, I've been in his head, I can get this perspective.
Absolutely. I mean, if anything, there's been some, I'll say one of the most fun things about reading it after having played him is like, was I tough enough? Because he's such a badass in the books, you know, with his stash and his glasses and stuff. And I was like, I didn't wear glasses. I wonder if I'd worn glasses, if that would have affected my behavior. My voice, could it have? Maybe, I don't know.
Can they hear the lack of glasses?
Could they hear that I wasn't wearing glasses? I don't know. Or the stash, but it's like, so in that sense, that was really cool to see him, to want to, bring that badassery to life, as it were.
In that same vein, he is a more inexperienced Gordon than you usually see him grizzled, already as the commissioner. He's got the light and he's on the roof, and you're having to play a very different, less seasoned, but still badass. What levels did you try to find in that, I know he lands here, and especially in pop culture, how do I find the A to get to the TUV?
I think you just, you live into the questions and the problems as they're happening. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
This guy's having all of this stuff thrown at him, and how he responds to it is what's going to allow him to become that version of himself in the future.
Was there a freedom in that for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. That was one of the real gifts of this, was getting to go in sort of in a booth. You're kind of on your own too, which is a blessing and a curse in a weird way. Now, we had everyone behind us was incredible, and the directors knew exactly what they were after, and the tone. We all knew what we were shooting for. So in that sense, I felt very well protected and well held, But yeah, it was very liberating to be able to sort of, go for that a little bit more, with a little more trepidation than I might have, feeling like I had to come into it as one that already existed, as a Gordon that we knew.
Now, at this point in listening, we're early into Long Halloween.
Yeah.
What's it been like as an actor to know as things develop, certain moments happen, but also need to feel that surprise of certain things happen, and also the evolution of the character? But the Long Halloween, there's such a mystery element. There's such a journey you have to go on. Is it hard to film out of order and find your way into certain moments? And
well, one of the true blessings about this process, one of the things that was really pleasurable for myself as more of a film and television actor coming to this in voice, is that we did do it in order. So
amazing.
we were able to record it more or less in chronological order. Now, I didn't always have everyone with me, in terms of reading with people and that kind of stuff, but that was a gift, because we did get to go moment through moment. Now, some of the earlier ones, I want to say in year one, we did a lot of the internal voice first. And that was really helpful too, because you got to really get into the mind of Gordon. You got to really be thinking the way, because so much of it's thought.
Yeah.
And so we did all the thoughts, and then we went back and did sort of the vocal stuff. And that was a really great process.
You literally got to get in the head of your character.
Literally. Which is really special. It's what you always shoot for. And here we are actually doing it.
You got to do the actor's method. You got to process and then externalize twice.
Essentially, yeah.
Did you have a different voice as you developed the internal that you were surprised the external changed? Was there an aha moment of I have found Jim through the process of finding Jim?
I'll say that the internal voice, the thoughtful voice, was so thrown away, as we say. That was the note would be, throw it away more, throw it away even more. And I'd say, gosh, if I keep throwing this away, what are we going to have? What are we going to have here? But sure enough, I thought it actually ended up getting us to a really subtle place.
That's really interesting, because I imagine with screen-based mediums, you've got a different, one, the lack of chronology, but you've also got a little less freedom of just consciousness, because your face that you're pulling is going to be on camera. Was there anything you found in doing something in voiceover that you're going to bring to the next project because there was a different uniqueness to that freedom?
Absolutely. Well, the thing I was most concerned about with voice was too much, as we got into putting too much on it, because it's such a subtle medium. And when people are only approaching it with their ears, that's every tiny little thing makes a difference. So
yeah,
that attention to detail blew me away.
Were there moments on relying? You're talking about the minutia and how you've got every little bit that we're hearing, but were there moments that influenced how you performed Gordon because you knew how small these little changes would be? Is there anything that you did differently since you knew there wasn't a visual element to your performance that you might have done differently with just voice?
Sure. There were all sorts of we were interstitial sort of grunts and groans and moans and and nerves. And you could do a lot. You could get a lot with a little.
Yeah.
You really could. So that was definitely something to discover.
In life, I always find there's interesting moments when you're like, oh, this is a new chapter. I've moved. Were there any of those where you're like, this isn't year one anymore?
Yeah, I think generally, I think we all started to just feel more comfortable with one another. And I know early on, you want to make sure you're doing right by your higher ups. You want to make sure everyone's digging what you're doing and stuff.
Sure.
And then on something like this, you start to hit a stride. People seem happy with what's going on. You feeling better about what you're doing. The ins and outs are more available to you. At your disposal. So then there does become a little bit more of a freer. I remember, we would do small jokes with one another by the time we were doing Long Halloween, whereas on the year one, I was sort of just here to work and make sure I do this.
You were Gordon. Yeah. You were like, this is office.
We're not effing around here. So.
Now this character is not only our eye line, but he's also one of the few people that believes in Batman earlier on than most.
Right.
He's such a unique position in Gotham because I think without Gordon, the vigilante becomes a pure nuisance. Like, we need Gordon kind of vouching as an audience. How do you personally perceive the Batman as a comic fan, and how do you think Gordon perceives Batman?
Well, as a comic fan, I just love the Batman for what he does, for everything he does and how well he does it.
Yeah.
And I always really appreciated that he was human.
Sure.
That to me was what set him apart from so many of the other characters that I was reading or that I was, introduced to. There's no true superpower here. It's a guy who's working to be his best vigilante self.
Yeah.
And using all of the resources at his disposal to come up with that best version. So, that I always really admired as a reader. I think Gordon at first is a little peeved with the vigilante thing, right? Because it's like kind of doing my job. Also, kind of makes the police look bad. We can't do it on our own, so we need this guy there helping us. But of course, you're absolutely right. He does need Batman at the end of the day.
Yeah,
yeah.
I've loved that Gordon. To me, he's been portrayed so differently, so many different ways through so many different mediums. And it feels like there's always a new way to find Gordon. But your take is so specifically 20s. Like, it feels like the 1920s to me in the 2020s, but it's also so new and fresh. Was there any, other than the Chicago, was there any slang or intonation or anything that you were looking for to make it specific to a radio drama? Because that to me feels so specific to this whole experience.
Sure. Well, first of all, I appreciate it because I think that's a really cool thing that came through was that sort of like old, that tone. So much of it was there in the actual dialogue, in the actual words on the page. So whether Frank Miller wrote it with that unconsciously or subconsciously or, it's there. It was, and so we did try to stay true to the word, which I think is really cool. And I was mindful of when we were turning trying to into Trina. Like, that's not, today we say Trina.
Yeah.
But I didn't want Gordon to say, Gordon says trying to.
Right. I love that example. Yeah. That's exactly what I was curious about.
Yeah, that happened on, fairly, not regularly, but we were cautious to make sure that we weren't eliding too much.
Were there moments in the booth that you felt that click into someone else? I know with acting there are sometimes where I used to act and I remember being like, oh, the character happened. Yes. And were there moments that you got to remember yourself as a kid reading Commissioner Gordon going like, this is an out-of-body experience. I'm Gordon right now.
There were moments like that were surreal, absolutely, where you're just like, is this happening? And especially later in the sessions, if you've been doing it for 2 or 3 hours, you're sort of like, you sometimes can be in altered states,
Sure.
Where am I? What's going on? Who am I? We've been doing this a while. And, but I would say the other thing that was fascinating was seeing where we overlapped. I'm a proud father of 2 boys. Shout out to Lee and Val. The stuff with James was very. I remembered being with my son, and I was very blessed to take a large role in being a primary caregiver for my children and for helping out my kids. I remember the stuff with James was very personal, so that was really powerful to be able to sort of be in the booth and you're patting your shoulder, but you're imagining your own son.
Yeah.
And it's all happening, and it's I do think it brought something to that.
I love that you bring up the James moment because I have mentioned it, and you didn't know this, but I've mentioned it every single time I've recorded talking about this show. The moment of the leap is, to me, the thing where I went, oh no, I have to be a part of this. Like I in some way I must be involved because that, to me, somehow transcended a comic that I've loved for 30 years.
Right on.
Like, that is such a special beat.
Well, it's so cool to hear that because I know that's obviously what we wanted. And those are little anxiety making in the booth because you're like, you're in thin air. I mean, it's a microphone and you and maybe it's the people on Zoom or, and someone helping you with the sound. And, you know, you have to get there. You just have to. And again, you pull out all the tricks of the trade and you pull out all the tools in your toolbox and you just go for it.
Now, I got to experience it completed. I went in and I got to hear it all done. You've been there from the whole journey. How has it been hearing these episodes? Like, you had all imagination for a lot of the score and the sound effects. What's it been like to actually experience the art completed?
Well, for me, it brings it completely to life. That's the most exciting thing. You know, like let's just say we start with the subway scene, you know, and I'd been doing the subway scene for the audition, and I did the subway scene for the callback, and I did the subway scene in the booths.
Sure.
Twice sometimes, or we did pickups on the subway scene. And it's always been just me in the subway, you know?
Yeah.
And then to hear it with people grumbling, people reading their newspaper, people bumping into one another. I mean, it really does just enrich it. It just really brings it to life, and it's so exciting. But I will say, when I first listened to it, I thought, that sounds like me. That's funny.
Crazy.
I thought it would sound like, I don't know who I thought it would sound like.
You had an out-of-body experience later where you're like,
literally,
wait, no,
that's me. I'm on this thing.
Oh, Jay Paulson's here. What a concept.
Huh. Yeah.
So I love that. For me, it is like being on a set. You've got, you know, this visual experience, or maybe you're using a green screen, or maybe you've got a blue screen. You've still got some visual cues, but for you, you're in a booth. You've got nothing except for the imagination. And to me, that's the experience of listening to it. Is I'm having mind's eye visuals of sometimes the artist, but sometimes my own imagination. Are there things that you visualize differently when you're in the booth than when you listen? Do you have any like sense memory from like, oh, right, that happened?
There were times in the booth when we pretended to smoke.
Yeah.
You know, because that does shape your behavior. It shapes where you breathe in a line. It shapes how you deliver a line. If you know you're inhaling at this point, you know you can't finish a line at this point, et cetera.
Sure.
You know, there were moments when you'd pull a gun and you'd want to, you know, you'd want to have something to go with there. Then there's the more comical stuff where you're beating yourself up in a booth by throwing yourself on a wall and then on the other wall and hoping that it sounds like someone getting pummeled, you know? And then, you know, then in the more intimate moments where they might ask, how about kissing your hand, you know, when you go to kiss Essendon, and you say, listen, let's go for it. Let's do it. What can we do? Let's see how it goes, you know?
Now, I love that this will be some people's first Commissioner Gordon. I love that is a new take that is from such a classic story. What if we're looking at just year one before we get to Long Halloween? What would you love new listeners to take away from your Jim?
He has his faults, but he's got his code that he does live by. When he makes a mistake, he owns up to it. You know, he faces the music. He, you know, he does have that sense of right and wrong. And even when he speaks to them and says, we can bend these things a little bit, but we can't break them or else we're just as bad as they are. You know, and I do think that's his sort of heart and his psyche speaking his truth.
I've always had this theory, and you would have a very strong perspective having embodied this man. To me, the thing that bonds Batman and Jim is that Batman has a code, and in my opinion, Batman doesn't kill. But I also love that is mirrored in Commissioner Gordon with his fellow cops, and that bond of that one rule is what I always saw, and that's why the rooftop between Harvey Dent, Jim Gordon, and Batman means so much to me, because that represents three men with a code, and they all kind of see each other in that way. Was that something you really wanted to establish from the beginning of that hard line he has? That way, as things get messier, you know what to fall back on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we knew that was his, like we were using the word code, but yes, that was his center point, you know, and that was what they had all agreed on, you know, when they have the meeting, and this is how things are going to go. And then you're right. How much do we bend them? How far do we bend before it breaks?
Now, we've talked a lot of DC High Volume. I got to talk about the comics themselves. I'm such a comic book nerd.
Yeah.
What did you love growing up about Batman that you still love? And is there anything that is different now, having played someone in the world?
Oh, the actual experience of reading?
Yeah.
The
Gotham
artwork.
And yeah.
I mean, the artwork was insane. I mean, that's iconic that pose he does with the lightning
Oh,
flash
yeah,
going
the
down
beautiful
is
Miller art.
just like, yeah. I mean, so that was, as a young reader, that art was captivating, absolutely captivating. And the way he could tell that story from frame to frame with those characters and that line, his line was really incredible.
So one of the craziest facts for me as a fan of this, one of the things that I was like, there's no way, like in the IMDb trivia of my mind, I heard that this is your first voiceover work of something like this, and you kept up with some like seasoned vets, and you're a seasoned vet in other mediums, but what was it like, and how is it possible this is your first voiceover works? It's insane.
Well, it was incredible, and I felt like I'd been knocking on the voiceover door for a while. And finally someone answered. So that was really, and not just anybody answered, I mean, it was really an amazing opportunity. And it was great to learn on the fly. I have a bunch of friends in the business who've been doing voice for a long time. And I would say, so do you have any tips for me on this, that? Or what do you think I should do here? But in general, everyone who was behind the scenes knew exactly sort of the tone they wanted and what they wanted out of it. Then it really did feel organic. I felt so supported. I felt like everyone was there to sort of help me do my best. And I did my thing. And as long as people kept coming back like, this is going well, I thought, all right, I guess it's going well.
There's not a note of novice in it. Was there any moment where it felt different not having everyone around you because you're traditionally on like a set? Like, was there anything you had to kind of reprogram?
There's always times when you wish you'd had someone to bounce it off of. And a lot of the heavier scenes, I was very grateful to have directors or people who would read the person opposite. And that's always helpful, I think, just in terms of what we were talking about earlier, catching your breath and recognizing where you would interrupt someone, this kind of thing. But I read books to my boys until they were about 15 years old. And maybe that has something to do with it. But I loved bringing them all to life. So, maybe that had something to do with it.
That is great Jim Gordon training. Like that, of any character, I'm like, of course, that would actually help.
Yeah. But it was an amazing opportunity. And it was really interesting to learn the differences, specifically with how subtle. I couldn't believe, as I mentioned earlier, Coy, that you can just toss it. No mustard on it. I'm a character actor. I'm an actor who loves character. I love to build the character. I love to throw stuff on it. Obviously, we talked about the accent.
Yeah.
I'm that kind of actor who wants to make a bold choice and put my shoulder behind it. And I believe that ends up with usually a more dynamic performance, something that's more delightful to the audience. And in this instance, I think it was really interesting how much you can take away and still come up with this richness and this dynamic performance.
Well, you feel the layers, absolutely. So I'm fascinated by that process.
I so appreciate it. Again, my gratitude to everyone behind it, the directors and the writers are obviously, and the production. I mean, it was really a team effort. And I was just so grateful to feel like we were all in there with the same goal in mind, wanting to make the best Batman ever,
Yeah, and it's one of my favorite adaptations of all time.
Wow, so cool, Coy. Thanks, man.
So where we are in the story right now, we have this moment where we have Dent and you approaching Bruce Wayne, and we're starting to see trust kind of deteriorate. There's high stakes, high tension, high mystery. Can you tease anything for folks about where we're about to go next?
Well, I think at this point, like you said, some of the trust is eroding, and I'm not sure Gordon knows exactly where he is in terms of his relationship with the Batman. And if it's possible that Bruce Wayne might be involved in this, what does that portend for the future?
I really love that there are people listening to this that haven't read The Long Halloween that are getting the mystery like unfurling in this way that feels so classic mystery novel.
Sure.
And it's so interesting to me to play a character that is part of the mystery. Was it fun to have that like Agatha Christie whodunit element as part of the character?
Especially like we talked about, especially recording in order.
Yeah.
You really see the chips fall as they do. You know what I mean? Like one at a time, you're chasing this lead. Nope. You're chasing that lead. Nope. Did he really believe it was that lead? Nah, I guess so. It's like that was fascinating to see, all those different degrees of the hunt, the chase, and then solving the mystery, as you said.
Devouring it is such a different animal than living it. Like this comic is not one I could like month to month. I was lucky enough it came out when it was completed, so I just poured through.
Yeah, for sure.
It must have been interesting to have the element of time between recordings and to live in those beats and have all that as it fell apart.
A little bit, yeah. But I just think you've hit on something that's, to me, the most exciting thing about the whole thing, which is the idea of reading the whole thing while you listen.
Yeah.
You know, to me, that was what we were doing. That was really different.
Did you use the frames as like storyboards for your work? Like
Absolutely. We would do them. I would do them the night before we worked. I would refresh on where we were in the story and use the visuals to help. And then it was very often it would help in recording to bring it up and for everyone to remember, okay, this is where we were at this point. This is what the frame is. This is what Frank put here.
Yeah.
So, that definitely brought it to life. It was really cool to have that as sort of like a background inspiration.
So I've listened to this 3 ways, and I love talking to people about their experience of absorbing it. I listen to it as I'm multitasking, like driving or doing something active, because I think you use a different part of your brain for that. I also love listening to it. I've got these crazy KEF speakers that are floor standards that I just position myself like that hi-fi ad. What was it, Maxell? Where I'm just like listening to high volume. Yeah. And then I also love doing the multitasking of either a physical comic or using DC Universe Infinite and listening and going through. Do you have a listening favorite?
I love the imagery with the sound.
Yeah.
I think it's really amazing to watch the thoughts and the words come into my ears as my eyes go over them. Something really special there.
Yeah, I love that there's so much versatility with this work.
Oh, I do too.
And a testament to your work, man. It really is something special.
It means so much to me, Coy. It was a true honor. When it finally comes together and you're like, this is happening, you really do feel in a very real way, welcomed into a pantheon. And it just feels like, what a gift. And the fact that everyone was willing to allow me to put some personal stuff in, to allow me to work with it the way I wanted. And, I felt just so great, so well supported.
Thank you, man. I really, like I said, I love this character. That moment on the leap that clearly meant so much to you as well is something that I will always have, is like, this is brand new and something I could recite, but I get to have it a new way. So thank you so much for that work.
It means so much to me, Coy. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Love talking to Jay Paulson. His raw emotionality is so apparent in all this work. I really love his connection to Jim Gordon, and especially his note about his kids and how you could feel that with Jim Gordon and his kid in year one. That really meant a lot to me. Speaking of a man who understands emotionality, who brings so much emotion to these characters, we've got Sam Ewing, the composer for all things DC high volume. Let's bring out Sam. We are sitting down with Sam Ewing. You've heard his music on The Walking Dead, on God of War Ragnarok. He's the composer on DC High Volume Batman. How you doing, man?
I'm good. This is awesome. Thanks for having me.
DC High Volume Batman has this incredible audio force to it. And I have to imagine when you find out you're doing something like Batman, what's your first thought making a story set in Gotham and the greater world of Batman?
I frankly never imagined I would ever get such a chance. So weirdly, I felt like super prepared to take it on, because I think there's like zero fear, because it's like, you're kidding me. All right, well, let's go. Let's do it, What I particularly find exciting about the audio version of it is that it naturally just puts some emphasis on music, right?
Sure.
Because there aren't that many elements. There's voice, there's sound design, and then there's music. Yeah, it's just so freaking cool.
So coming in and getting the ground floor approach, like you get to build the foundation, especially because, as you're saying, the music gets to be such a focal point of the experience.
Yeah.
Were there core ideas or references that you knew day one, and were there any that developed over time?
There was so much discussion how we approach this, just like musically, sonically, and I think ultimately, like the visuals are what never failed us. And there's an undoubtedly, the word I would use is gothic quality to the visuals in the comics, and just associated with Batman in general, right? Yeah. And the word gothic tends to have a certain associations with it musically. I think of, first of all, like literal Gothic cathedral is like an easy, lateral move. Lots of space, lots of reverb, maybe choirs and big instrumentation, orchestra. You really want it to feel like larger than life and sort of exaggerated in that way. And also, I would say, just dark and at times sad, other times obviously heroic, other times just grimy, grimy and grungy.
There's a scale and a scope that is implied in Gothic, and that's interesting. Like Batman also has that. The gravitas of Batman feels like a church.
Yeah, it totally. Yeah, that's a good point.
And I hear that, and I also love that his characters feel like an orchestra. Like when you've got certain Batman characters, I've always loved the psychology of Batman. To me, feeling mirrored in his rogues. And to me, there are the goals of his villains mirroring who he'd be if he was a lesser man.
Sure.
So to me, like, if he'd gone to politics, Two-Face, if he'd gone to more of the fun side, Catwoman, they all that to them.
Yeah.
But to me, the way you play these themes is that with the orchestra. So I'm wondering if there are certain characters you knew right away, strings, brass. Like, were there characters like, I think they sound like this?
Oh, man. It's so funny. The short answer is yes, but it's these are things that sort of like, it's like an instant reach for certain colors. In other words, it's less complicated than you might think. Batman, Bruce Wayne, he's got gravitas. He's lives in a big mansion. Like he's heroic, but he's dark. So we need like dark, big orchestral instrumentation with some choir to support him. Bang, there's your theme, right? Next, Catwoman. She's in the shadows and spying and kind of tiptoeing, and she's graceful and she's sexy and she's mischievous. And so you have something lighter that lives up in terms of instrumentation is just higher, right? You've got twinkling harp that's kind of prowling around on the rooftops. You've got strings playing harmonics, and they're like absolute highest register, playing this sort of slow kind of like crawling melody, and it's just like literally, if you're like a child and like you're asked to describe like a cat, like you just take those descriptions and like apply them to music and to instrumentation, and you've got your themes. And it's really like it's the shortest distance between the two possible that is usually the answer. You know what I mean?
You want it to be linear, so it is an immediate connotation. Like you're like, oh, that does sound like blank.
Yeah, absolutely. And the audiences pick up on that, even if they can't describe it. And music is often so not in the foreground. It's setting the stage, it's bringing the atmosphere for something.
Did any theme or motif change or surprise you because you realized it actually felt more like another character, like one that wasn't as linear, one that wasn't as direct? But say you're working on like a character, going through infidelity, and you're like, oh, that doesn't quite sound mischievous enough, but I might be able to save that for another thing.
Yeah.
Was there anyone that got like shifted?
Yeah, it definitely. I had written a track for a theme for Catwoman, and it was with these sort of mischievous bells and these very unsettling little strings that kind of like sit as a bed. And somehow someone on the team was like, Joker. And I was like, oh my God, like I didn't even think of that. So
cool. That's so fun because of the Joker's inherent nature to just like impulsively intrude in story.
Yeah.
Like I like that the Joker theme also happened at you.
I know.
Like the Joker does.
It's that's a good point.
That's really fun. I like that.
I know. And sometimes when there's this like zone you enter when you're inspired by an idea that you get, and you have a vague idea that, okay, yes, like this will be Catwoman's thing, but like it enters your brain and you just got to like get it out of you and like out of your fingers, and, like onto the keyboard. And then you've built your track and you've composed your thing, and it happens extremely quick because you've just got this burst, right? So I knew like this is cool. Like I really like this, and this feels to me like Catwoman. And then it took the observation and discussion with like other people on the team to realize this would work so well for the Joker. But that's what's cool too about like collaborating and working with other people who can help you see things that like with a little more distance and clarity.
I liked you had to externalize it and then get another perspective to see what it was actually going to end up being. That's really unique. That's a lot of fun.
I know.
Now, this is a really unique medium that is, you mentioned earlier how sometimes in projects, music tends to feel like it's going to drift to the background or it can't be in the foreground. And this is so foreground, so music forward, which I love.
Sure,
like the soundscape here, the musical soundscape versus the production design versus the voice work, like all of them are the leads. Was there anything in this medium that you found challenging because you became a leading part of the front of the experience?
I would say yes. I might say that the medium itself, like any medium, has a particular set of challenges that sometimes are tied to clarity for the audience. Personally, I would put a big emphasis on that one for this because, let's be honest, a lot of people who are listening to this are like cooking pasta or like driving to work. There's a lot there, like optimal situation is like you're sitting in your like, you know, $10,000 speaker like studio where there's like no external noise and your eyes are closed and like, right, but like very few people are doing that. So I wanted immediately to make just clear when certain characters enter the scene and we don't have those frames, which are so gorgeous. And I'm hoping a lot of people will read along and look at these comics, which are like so well adapted to the audio, because that just enriches the experience. But without that, it's important to me that the music can cue what is happening and what characters are entering into those frames. It can be, even if it's not confusing, it's just supportive. And this is what I find really exciting about this particular show is that the themes, there are a lot of themes, and it's a super fun playground to use those and use motifs. And sometimes it's just like someone is referenced by Bruce or by Catwoman, and we hear a couple notes, and it just clues the audience in, you know. Or at the end of an episode, maybe the person being looked at, who in the frame of the comic might be like a silhouetted figure who has no dialogue. Like that's the ending of the visual, but in this medium we don't get that dialogueless visual. So I will give you their theme instead, and it tells you who it might be, and is so suggestive, you know, in a way that the visuals can also be.
And it's super cinematic. Like there's so much scope. Again, the grandiose, like Batman, there's so much energy and big there. So I went through this each issue of Year One a different way because I wanted to experiment. So I listened to it with like 4-foot Kef speakers, and then I dove in, which I loved. That was a thing, man. I mean, as a vinyl head, I was like, what is this gonna do? And then I sat down in my car because I wanted to see what it was like with like different audio arrangement. And then I sat down with some nice Harman Kardon headphones. And then the last time I did it with the pages.
Wow.
So issue 4 for me was really cool because that was the first time I added the visual, and the entire motorcycle sequence, which I could describe from memory, was new again.
Wow.
And so for me, it is a repeat viewing experience, but I'd love to know for you, is there a moment, for me it's the motorcycle, me going like, this is a gift because I got to relive my childhood.
Yeah.
Is there a moment or scene for you as the person on the other side of that creative process that really stood out as like, Eureka, this is the strength of this medium?
Man, I feel like I have so many examples, but just thinking about the end of episode 1, when Bruce becomes the Bat, right? That is, I mean, visually, it's so iconic. And there are so many reasons that scene, if you're reading it, is standout. It's iconic. It's Bruce Wayne is becoming Batman, right? And he's going, and it just so beautifully ties in the tragedy of his parents and into this like newfound sort of triumph, if you will. And yeah, like how do you take that on musically? You know, what the heck?
Yeah.
Like how can we not step on this, but also like make it even more enriched and like add a musical theme to it? So that's what I've done, and we've got a musical theme for sure, and it's along the same lines. It's got this tragic, gothic, almost classical quality to it, and a female voice, which I like to think is, you know, like the voice of his mother, right?
Yeah.
So another simple, just very direct, like pull right there, just instrumentally, just mother. How about female vocal? Very, very straightforward. But you know, I mean, the fans will have to let us know, you know, did I do it justice? But I think that's just an example where, I mean, it's just like an honor to score a scene like that, you know? And it's just like, it's honestly, you said cinematic, it's just like scoring a movie or, you know, the end of a like finale of a TV show or something.
It's so interesting how flippantly you're like, you know, you just do this and this. And in my head, I'm like, I can't even read music, man. Like, I love that you're just like, and then you just make it big. And I'm like, I can't even, I like listening to music because it's alchemy to me. Like, it doesn't even make sense.
I so appreciate that, because that, for me, it's really job security, you know, because truly, I'll say it again. Like, I bet if you were like, you asked a 5-year-old, like, stand at a piano and like play good guy music, they'd twinkle around with like the upper keys where it's like, you know, and then like play the bad guy, you play the low keys, you know? And like, there you go. That's
but
pretty much all it is. But as we get older,
we get self-conscious, and we wouldn't be able to do that. And music, you stay in that childlike wonder, and you can make art from knowing that instinct.
That's true.
As someone that reads comics, I got the childlike wonder of the storytelling, but I scared piano. So thank you. Now, welcome. Year One and Long Halloween, they mean the world to me, and I can hear now new elements because of them, because of what you've done. Were there any other comics that influenced your take on Batman that you think helped inform the overall zeitgeist of Batman, bringing that to these stories?
Well, I'm a big cinema guy, right? So maybe to sort of give you a slightly left of field answer again, the mood's like set, and that's I think maybe the word that's important here is like the mood and like the atmosphere that I think Christopher Nolan did so well. It's one of the strongest takes on Batman in a linear, like audio or visually form, right? Mm-hmm. So, and one of the things that he's just done so well is just create this sense of emotion and like driving forward and sort of gluing together scenes. And that was critical in the opening episodes, because we've got these intertwined stories that are intercutting. I mean, you might remember better than I, but it's like every page or two.
Yeah, it's rapid, and it's a lot. It's dense.
It's super dense, and you're cutting between Jim Gordon and Bruce Wayne. And this is before either of them are like, you know, heroes yet. Mm-hmm. And like, how do you treat? That's, I mean, the challenge there is immense from an audio perspective, because we're just getting to learn these characters, and we're establishing the world of Gotham, but we've also musically we want to present something that's cohesive and not just like annoying and like jittery, right? So there's something to be said about, you know, Christopher Nolan's approach, which is just like, well, don't make them separate stories with like, oh, we got Jim Gordon and oh, we got Bruce Wayne, but just like, this is the story of Batman year one, man. Like, it's coming together, and just like go along the ride with us, you know, and we'll help transitions out, but we won't slam the listener over the face every time there's like a page turn, right? It's too much. So there's something to be said for that. And so yeah, that anyway.
No, it totally answers my question. I never would have considered it can't be cacophonous. Like, you can't have those things conflict.
Right.
And in a comic, you don't have that concern because you're controlling the pace. I can say when I turn the page, whereas you don't have the option of that, which is interesting. Right. Now, in this experience, it's a series of voice actor, sound design, score. We've talked about all those elements, but this is so collaborative, working with DC, working with Realm, working with these different teams.
Right.
Can you tell me about any moment where the collaborative nature inspired something you might not have expected? Like where a note or something came in and you're like, oh, well, that recontextualizes this?
Well, the theme for that I had written for Catwoman that later became the Joker is a prime example.
Yeah, that's pretty perfect.
That's a perfect example of just this collaboration that is like, and I would say a necessary one where, as I was describing, a lot of times the composer is just simply too close to the material.
Sure.
Especially early on. When a composer comes onto a project, you like entrench yourself and you live in that world and you're just like, you're trying and using like a ton of effort, I would say, to just like unearth these musical versions of these ideas and these themes and like get them to life. And then once they get going, it really sort of, there's a rhythm and the effort becomes less strenuous and you really find a stride. And my point is that in those early iterations, like the collaboration is so important.
Yeah.
Because someone you're entrenched, you just don't have the perspective. So early on I was entrenched with Marcus Bagala, who was helping. We were both composing themes together, and we were doing a lot of back and forth. He was the one who was like, dude, like, I don't know, man, but I feel like this Catwoman thing you just wrote could be sick for the Joker. And I was like, whoa, okay, sweet. So that's where the seed was kind of planted. So yeah, like those collaborations, they're so key.
And last question for you before we wrap out, because in dealing with comics, often get to have that unique perspective of Easter eggs and looking closely for comic moments in other mediums. But uniquely with this, there's auditory cues and moments, and I don't often get to celebrate audio Easter eggs. So for people that want to listen more closely or want to be slightly ahead of things, is there anything you can tease in what we've had so far with year one, what we have upcoming, whether it's the beginning, middle, or end of Long Halloween? Are there any Easter eggs or things to listen for more attentively?
Oh, that's a really good question. There are little Easter eggs for sure. I would say in Long Halloween, as we get to the holiday killer, just become familiar with these two little sort of off-kilter piano notes and the little bed that lives underneath it. I think it's gonna, as I had mentioned earlier, in the comics, sometimes you have these frames where there is no dialogue. This is a thing that just, it becomes sort of a chameleon, and it's a really fun thing to play with and sort of, I wonder if this character is the killer. I wonder if that character is the killer. So we get to have a lot of fun with that. So I'll say that.
That is a very fun use of mystery in the medium. I'm so excited to hear it myself. I haven't yet. Very excited. Thank you for your work, man. I can tell you love these characters like I do, and you use your alchemy for them, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Pleasure's all mine. Thanks.
I would like to thank Jay Paulson and Sam Ewing for joining me today. Two passionate, absolute powerhouse creators. I love the emotionality and heart they bring to this work. I would also like to thank you, dear viewer, for watching this show. It means the world to me. You're joining me for interviews with all these talented folk responsible for DC High Volume Batman. I, while talking about all of these comics, want to recommend you some comics directly. First up, The Long Halloween has a sequel that is coming out monthly right now. Batman, The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween is honoring Tim Sale, the artist behind The Long Halloween, who we lost very, very suddenly a couple years ago, and it's an artist I love very dearly, and the comic almost never existed. Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale had conceived it, and instead of letting it sit in a shelf, a number of artists have picked up, each individually doing an issue to honor Tim Sale. We just had issue 7 come out. That is Dave Johnson and Dave Stewart. And it's just so special to do a comic in this way. And it's also fantastic. And if you're loving The Long Halloween, I highly recommend you check out Batman: The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween. Also want to recommend to you Batman Hush. To me, this is a beautiful comic that's in the vein of Long Halloween. It's like a not a spiritual sequel, but something in that direction where you get the mystery, you get the intrigue, you get the whodunit, but with Jim Lee on art, and that is such a good time. Always highly recommend Hush. It is such a great book, which also right now coincidentally has a sequel currently coming out monthly, Batman Hush 2. And you, dear viewer, can check out any of those at your local comic shop, as well as on the DC Universe Infinite app, which is DC's online comic catalog. There are tens of thousands of comics available there. And if you ever want more recommendations, you can hunt me down on social media. I'm at Coy Jandreau on Instagram and YouTube, and at Far Too Many Cons. Always ask me comic questions. I'd love to give you recommendations. And once again, in case you don't know how much I appreciate you, thank you for watching this show. It truly means the world. Go read some comics. Go listen to some High Volume. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us in this special episode of DC High Volume Batman. Executive producers for Realm, Carly Migliori and Roshan Singh Sambi. Executive producers for DC, Mike Pallotta and Victor Diaz. Producer, Adam Boffa. Technical director, Insung Huang. Engineers, Jason Gambrell and Echo Mountain. Hosted by me, Coy Jandreau. Special thanks to Fred Greenhalgh, Kaylin West, Olivia DeRienzo, Sam Ewing, and to Comic Books for Existing.